Welcome to the Flying Trout Podcast. Here, we're dedicated to the pursuit of wild experiences, finding space and connection on the water, and to sharing the stories that come with living a life out there. Ready? Let's get it. All right, we made it. Episode 5. And we got a couple of kind of fun updates. First off, microphone. After some not super fun tech problems last week, just with breaking a mic and all this different stuff, actually got like a real actual microphone. And so this should be pretty fun, just being able to, hopefully it's better audio quality. We'll kind of experiment with that, but definitely makes me feel more like a podcaster, which I think is kind of fun. But this week we've got episode 5 here, and this week we're really going to dive into fishing gear. What do you actually need, and all those sorts of things. Because I think fly fishing gear can get really overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff that you could buy and you can buy, and you can spend a ton of money on just gear and gear alone. But I also don't think that necessarily makes, sometimes the biggest difference in the world. Sometimes the gear isn't really all that. So, like normal, we're going to dive into an article that I wrote. This one's called "What Do You Really Need?" and it kind of talks about that idea of gear a little bit. And then we're just going to break it down a little bit and talk about what you actually need, especially if you're a starting angler, what will actually get you by on the river and get you going. So that's what we're going to dive into this week. So let's get into it. So again, this is this week's article. And this is called "What Do You Really Need?" Gear is vital to a fly angler. It's what we depend on out there. It's what helps put fish in the net, and let's face it, getting that new piece of gear you've been yearning for years is always fun. But how much do we really need? How much do we need to spend? And how much is just too much gear? I think those questions have different answers for everyone. Your goals, your methods, and what you find fun will shape those answers. There's a lot of complexity here, and I think it's something that steers many would-be fly anglers towards other type of fishing, and that's a shame. The truth is, fly fishing is rewarding because of its challenges and complexities. When you embrace that and can provide the single greatest experience in all of sport. Of course, I guess I am a little biased. I want to simplify that picture a bit. You don't need a 100% optimized rod and reel combo or the most efficient tackle setup of all time to catch fish. I fished the value gear I bought from Walmart for the first 10 years of my fishing life, and guess what? I still caught fish. Does the gear I use today work a little better for the situations I encounter? Absolutely. Do I now spend top dollar on some of the best equipment money can buy? Yep. But here's the thing. I've been fishing for 14 years at the time of this article, longer now, and I know I love this sport. I know I'll use the gear. If you're just starting out, don't get bogged down in all the stuff you hear about optimizing your gear. That's step 10, and you are on step 1. Buy the cheap stuff. You can get a full rig, a rod, reel, line for around $50. Grab a box of assorted flies for $10, a couple leaders, and some 4X tippet for another $10, and just get out on the water. Don't overthink it. Just go fish. Or take a guide trip. They'll set you up with all the gear you need and teach you everything to get started. Truth is, fly fishing has never been easier to learn than it is right now. So, what is important when starting out? Honestly, the number one thing you can do to maximize your time on the water is learn how to cast. That's more accessible than ever. Search how to fly cast on YouTube and you'll probably get 100 of solid tutorials. My dad taught me by putting me outside with a rod and a bucket. He told me once I could land the fly in the bucket, he'd take me to a river. I still practice that way today from time to time. Go to a park or your backyard, drop a hula hoop on the ground, and practice your accuracy. When there's no pressure, there's no fish, there's no distractions, you can focus completely on your casting. I do this even now to keep my presentation dialed. Another critical skill is tying knots. If you can't tie knots, you can't tie on a leader, tippet, or flies, and I don't care how good your cast is, you can't catch fish with just fly line. Be pretty cool if you could, though. I'm just saying, if you got a video of doing that, that'd be impressive. This topic always gets way too complicated. There are tons of knots, but starting out, you only need two, I think. The clinch knot and the double surgeon's knot. That's it. Simple, versatile, and strong. Learn those and practice them. So many people get wrapped up in buying the best gear, but never stop to build their fundamentals. Some of those people don't catch fish, get frustrated, and leave the sport. There's a learning curve to fly fishing. No amount of money spent is going to make you a better angler. It's not what about you use, but about how you use it. So don't let your gear hold you back. Buy what you can afford, get out on the water, have fun, fish hard, practice the fundamentals, use the amazing resources we all have at our fingertips, YouTube, blogs, books, social media, and just get started. Have fun, friends. See you out there. So I think it's a pretty basic intro, right? It's not the longest article in the world or anything, but I think it really boils down this idea of not needing to have the best of the best all of the time. And instead focusing on, fundamentals, right? And so I think there's a lot to kind of dig in here. And so we'll just kind of get ripping a little bit. And I think the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was, I guess what you call like the gear trap. There's I've got friends that have wanted to get into fly fishing, and the first thing they always say to me is, "Oh man, well it's so expensive." And I think a lot of that is, they see what I have, and I've got expensive stuff. I've got a Sage fly rod that I spent a lot of money on. I've got Ross reel. I've got the Sims G3s. I've got all this fancy stuff, and that's great. I love my fancy stuff. But I mean, we're talking with all of that combined, a couple of grand, $3,000 maybe with all of my combined things, and that's not even counting if you throw in, base layers and stuff like that for the fall too. But I think a lot of people see that gear, right? And they see what these people that are super bought into it, they see all the gear that those people have, and they think, man, there's no way I can just spend a couple $1,000s to get into a river. And I can absolutely understand that. If you have never fly fished before and you've never done any of that, then 110%, you shouldn't be spending multiple thousands of dollars on gear to just step in. I think there's a lot of things that you can do just to get your feet wet with it per se. And I mean, especially during the summer, like right now, it's July. You can wet wade out there, no problem. You can just get out there, get a cheaper fly rod, get a couple of tippet and a couple of flies, and just get out there and have a good time. My first rod was a Walmart rod because my dad taught me how to fish when I was 8, and he didn't know if I was gonna like it or not. So of course he didn't buy me the most expensive thing ever, and he bought me like a $40 fly rod combo. I think it was from Fluger. And I fished that sucker for like 10 years, and I loved it. I loved that rod. Um, it was enough to get me out there and enough to get me hooked on this sport and to have fun. And I mean, really, that's the whole point, right? We don't want to be spending tons of money if it stresses us out. This is a fun thing that we all do that we can have a great time with. And so I think don't overcomplicate it. There's great entry level gear out there. Shields is an amazing resource that you can go to. If you've got one in your area, they're popping up all over the country now, and I think Shields is great because, number one, I mean, the people that work there will absolutely help you out and get you dialed in with everything that you need. But they've also just got some really nice, affordable sets. You could spend $100 to $200 and get a really, really nice rod reel combo that already comes fully equipped with line and the whole bit. They've got one made by TFO. I still use my TFO from time to time. I just have one of the combo sets I got right at Shields, and I've loved that rod. And I think that's something that really just keeps people away, is getting stuck in this gear trap and thinking that, oh my God, if I don't have the new, G. Loomis Asquith or the new Orvis Helios, then like what's the point? And I just think that's such a hard thing to get bogged down in. And so if that's you, if you're stuck in the gear trap, please just try to step out of that a little bit. You could even go on a guided trip, and those guys would absolutely get you set up with some things for you, and get you by for the day, and then you could see if you like it from there. So don't get stuck in that gear trap. Start cheap, and then you can slowly upgrade from there. Like I said, I fished that rod for 10 years, and then I finally upgraded. And then a couple years later, I upgraded to better waders and different things. You don't have to buy everything up at once, but buy the cheap stuff. Figure out if you like it, and then you can slowly start to trickle in that higher end gear. So I think that's the first obstacle that new anglers kind of have to get by, is that gear trap, right? And I think really what that can boil down to is trying to get to step 10 versus just trying to be at step 1, right? I think especially in today's day and age, we always think that, that next piece of fancy gear is going to be the end all be all for our casts and catching fish and all these different things. But I'm sorry to tell you that a beginner with $1,000 fly rod is not going to outfish somebody who's fished for a long time and is using a $40 Walmart rod. It's just not going to happen. Because what really matters and what's really important is how we're presenting those flies, how we're getting them to there. And a lot of that, if you're really good, can be amplified by gear, but it's never going to be created by the gear. The fisherman or woman is still the person that's going to be doing the fishing, and so that still needs to be the top priority, and just making sure that everything's good to go. So, step one is just progress in your fishing. Learn to cast really well, be super confident, um, and that'll help you a lot. I mean, even if you think about it from the perspective of, if you buy $1,000 fly rod to start off and you've never cast one before, well, you might accidentally hit the ground or a tree branch or something, and then you might snap that tip off, and oh my gosh, now you're out $1,000, right? That's just crazy. So, buy that cheaper stuff, get after that, and then focus on step one. Focus on tying your knots. Focus on learning the fundamentals of casting really well. Learn to wade, and focus on those things first. Then, once you feel really confident with all of those, then you can step into the next things, and start to get a little bit more, I don't know, picky or snooty with your gear per se. So that's it. Focus on step one there. So what actually matters, right? What actually is going to make a difference on the water? If I'm going to sit here and I'm going to tell you that it's not gear and it's not how much money you spend, then what is it, right? And I think it boils down to casting, it boils down to knots, and it boils down to time on the water. Casting, plain and simple, is the number one thing that a new angler can do that's really going to affect, you know, how their fishing is. Because if you can't get the fly to go where you want it to go, then you're going to have a really hard time fishing, because the fly is going to be all over the place. You're going to be getting stuck up in the bushes, and that, to be honest with you, is never truly going to go away. You're always going to get stuck in the bushes. It's just part of fly fishing. But there's a lot that you can do with that. If you are laying line down and you're getting sloppy presentations, and the stream is affecting your drift and all of those things, you're just not going to catch fish consistently enough to really feel good about it. And that's not going to be, better if you just go out there and spend a bunch of money. Knots are the other thing. I've seen time and time again, fishermen, sitting on the banks or sitting in the water, and they tie knots for what seems like forever. And they're out there, and I know that that's something that can get bogged down really quickly. Well, I'll tell you what, it's super cheap and super easy to just practice those knots at home. Get a small piece of rope, or you could even buy a little spool of fishing line or something like that, and just practice those knots. I really swear by the clinch knot and the surgeon's knot. People will tell you a bunch of others, but I think as long as it's knots that make sense to you and that you can, secure well and they hold, then I think you're going to be just fine. But the clinch knot and the surgeon's knot, those ones are mine. My go-tos. I still use them. The only other one I really throw in there is a perfection loop from time to time, especially when I'm tying my leaders and things like that. But really, knots can be huge for you. Just sitting there, tie knots, get confident, because it's way easier to practice in the house than it is out on the water when maybe your hands are cold or sweaty or covered in sunscreen or fish slime or whatever it is, right? So practice those knots at home, get really comfortable with those, and it'll just making switching things easier. And especially if you're starting off, you're going to get tangled a bunch and everything. And so being able to feel confident with tying those knots will just make you feel better when you got to clip those flies off. So focus on those knots tines. That'll help you out a little bit too. And I think the last thing that really actually matters is just time on the water. Really the best fishermen, they spend a lot of time on the water. And so stop focusing on spending gear, stop researching spending gear, and just go get out there and fish. You're going to learn so much more, and you're going to become such a better angler than you would if you were to spend a bunch of money. So spend some time out on the water, learn to wade great, find out where those fish are sitting, get some experience casting, tying knots, all these things. Time on the water is going to make the biggest difference for you. So check that out too. Okay, so that's what matters, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, can we fish without fly fishing gear? No, not really. You could go out to a river and you could try to grab fish, and again, if you can do that, then please send me a video because I would love to see that and have a great laugh. But most of the time, we're gonna need that gear, and we're gonna need to buy some stuff, especially if we're starting off and we don't have friends who fly fish or something like that. We're gonna have to buy some gear. So what do you buy? Well, I've got a small little beginner setup that I think can be really inexpensive. We're shooting for maybe like under 500 bucks, under 400 bucks, somewhere in that range to get everything you need to go out to a day of fishing. So I think first thing, you do need a rod, right? We need a rod, and we need a rod that has line on it and all these things. And so I think when you're starting off, buy a combo set. Combo sets are great. I kind of mentioned I started off with one from Walmart, but there's, you know, probably not the best place to get them anymore. But I think Shields or something like that. Those are great places to go. They've got friendly staff that'll help you out. They've got the product there. They've got knowledge. All of these things that can set you up for success really, really well. My favorite combo set ever is a TFO combo sets. Like I said, I still fish it. I think it's the TFO NXT combo set. It comes fully equipped with line, comes with a great reel. And those are awesome combo sets. I still have my 5 weight that I keep with me, and I fish it from time to time when maybe it's a little too windy or something for my 4 weight sage or something like that. My TFO NXT, I love that rod, and I think it's great. And I think it was when I bought it, it was either like 150 or 200 bucks, something in that realm. And so, I mean, like, that's pretty doable, right? Like, you can save up a little bit and buy that. And like I said, it comes fully equipped with line and all those things. Orvis makes some great ones. Fluger makes some really, really cheap ones. Lamson, I know, makes some as well. Reddington makes great combo sets for a really fair price. So check all these out and just find something like that, and I think that'll get you, set up in the right spot and have a rod that'll last you, a good couple of years of really learning to fish, and be really nice for you. Next thing, you do need some flies, right? So we've got our rod and we've got line on it, and we need some flies, right? So I would keep it really simple. If you're, just going with that, but you can just stop into, a Shields or a local fly shop or something like that, and ask the people working there. Be like, hey, what's biting right now? What should I start out with? Tell them you're just starting out, and get some tips on good flies to start off with. For me, it's always going to bow down to pheasant tails, hare ears, elk hair caddis. Maybe a parachute Adams in there, just things like that. Things that are going to be really, really nice and easy for you. And then just ask, your local fly shop or a great place that's got good knowledge, and they'll let you know. You also need some leaders. I wouldn't overcomplicate leaders because they can get really, crazy. I'm tying my own leaders now, and it's super fun and super rewarding, but it is crazy, and I acknowledge that. And so, take it for what it's worth. But really, all you need is you need some leaders, like a good pack of leaders. It comes with like three of them. You can probably get those for like $20, 10, $20, something like that. Nothing crazy. And then just get a spool of 4X tippet and a spool of 5X tippet, just to give you a couple different sizes to kind of flop between, and that'll get you really starting off. You can tie those straight onto that fly line. Go to your fly line to leader to tippet, and you'll be in a good place there. Two really easy things I think you need is just a pair of forceps and a pair of nippers. You can get those for like $5 a piece, something like that. It's not crazy, and those will just help you on the water. Especially the nippers you'll need to clip off line, and the forceps are really nice if like a hook is hard to get out of like a fish's mouth or whatever. You can use that, or for just grabbing small things. So pair of forceps, pair of nippers, and then last thing is polarized sunglasses. If you're fishing without polarized sunglasses, then to be honest, you're just doing it wrong. Polarized glasses really help you see below the surface of the water, and they just protect your eyes as well from the sun and everything. And you can get a pair of polarized sunglasses at Walmart or the gas station or anything small like that. And, you can get them for $5, $10, $15. If you can upgrade to a nice expensive pair of glasses, I would absolutely get a pair of either Costas or Maui Jims. Both of those are great sunglasses. They're going to protect your eyes, and those can be used, no matter what you're doing out in the woods or out in nature. Polarized sunglasses are huge, just to protect your eyes, help you out a little bit there. So definitely invest in those. Those might even be the first thing that I would maybe get a little bit more expensive on than everything else. So those are kind of the first things I would focus on getting set up, and beginner setup. Get that reel, just basic flies, get some leaders and some tippet, and then forceps, nippers, and a pair of polarized sunglasses. And honestly, with that, you should be rocking and rolling. Maybe a little something to throw it all in. A cheap chest pack or a fanny pack, or even a backpack you got laying around the house, just something like that, just to get you rolling. But that'll really get you set up in a good spot. So really, that should be pretty good. Last thing I kind of wanted to talk about with this was just, I think there's a tendency for fly anglers to feel like they are not as legit or not as welcome in the community if they don't spend a bunch of money on gear. And so if that's you, I just wanted to kind of encourage you a little bit and just say, first off, I don't think that's the truth at all. And I think you should just spend what you are able to spend. Even if you fished for years and you're still in your Walmart rod, great. You're probably still catching more fish than some of the guys out there who just bought the new Orvis Helios and can't catch a fish to save their lives. So don't let that bog you down too much. There are a lot of really good things that you can do and practice without having all the best equipment, because it's really not the gear that makes us great fly anglers. It's the fundamentals. It's understanding where trout are, and that's going to make you far more successful than any new piece of gear ever will. So try to keep yourself out of that mentality and just know that fly fishing is more about the experience and having fun on the water than about the flex of having the newest, greatest, shiniest new product. So just keep that in mind a little bit. Gonna finish off here with just a couple of listener questions that I've got here for you that kind of pertain to this. So first question I got here for you is, what's the first piece of premium gear I should buy once I get into the sport? So you already bought your basic stuff, and now you're looking at upgrading. And I think the first place I would start, and I kind of mentioned it before, but I'd start with sunglasses, because you're going to use them in more situations. You're going to use them for hunting or shooting or whatever that looks like for you. You're going to use those more. So get you a new pair of sunglasses. Number two is for me, what really limited my experience when I started off was my pack. My pack wasn't super well built. It was kind of bulky, had lots of pockets, but the pockets weren't super useful or anything. So I'd get you a new pack, a new vest, a new whatever it is, whatever you like. I'd get a new one of those just to make sure that you're, performing really well in the water and that's not slowing you down. And then third is I'd upgrade your rod. I think better rods can give you a ton more accuracy on the water and just a ton more power and all these things. So get you a new pair of sunglasses, upgrade those first, then a new pack if you feel like you need it. If you love your older pack, then great, don't worry about it. And then third, get a nice rod, spoil yourself a little bit, and going from the cheap rod to the expensive rod is going to feel absolutely crazy. It's one of the coolest feelings ever. So definitely focus on that. Second question I got here is, how do I know when it's time to upgrade my gear? I think that's another really, really good question. And for me, it just comes down to a really simple question you can ask yourself. Is your current gear limiting you on the water? And if the answer is yes, then I think it's time to get something new. If you're not casting as far as you want to, or it's not quite as accurate, or maybe it's slowing you down, whatever that looks like, whatever piece of gear, if it's limiting you on the water, then it's time to upgrade to a new piece of gear. So just keep that in mind, and I think it'll help you make a lot of decisions just in every piece of gear. So that's all we got for you for episode 5 of the Flying Trout podcast. I think we dove into some good stuff there and had some good conversation just on what it looks like to focus on connection in the sport and on those fundamentals instead of just buying the newest fanciest piece of gear. So I hope that helped you if you kind of struggle with that mindset, or if you've always wanted the perfect setup and you haven't quite been able to get it yet, or any of that. I hope that really does help. So next week, we're going to dive into water temps a little bit. This time of summer, I think it's a really great time to talk about water temps again. And just, what is ideal? What do trout like to eat in? What do they feed more in? What's great for the bites? What's safe for the trout, right? Are there temperatures that aren't good for them? All those types of things. That's what we're going to dive into. So if you've ever wondered, what's affecting the trout, or if that's, having an effect on the bite or anything like that, or if you've just missed days on the water because you thought it was too hot, I think next week, we'll really clear up that a lot for you. So we're going to talk about that. And until then, I just wanted to say thank you for listening to this podcast and for helping us grow. If you can, and you got the time, I would really appreciate it if you shared this podcast, left a comment, left a review. All those things, they really, really do help. So share us on your social, leave a comment, a like, whatever that looks like for you. And I really, really do appreciate you all listening and being here while I kind of, sit rambling about fishing. So thank you guys for coming in. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. So until then, fish well, friends. We'll see you out there.